This is Courchevel, 6,588 feet of elevation and 18.6 runway gradient, and exactly zero room for error. In a jet you'd be stuck on the ground, but in the PC-12 NGX this is just another Tuesday. Last week we mastered the office. Today we're putting that office to work. We're executing a high altitude departure out of one of the world's most dangerous airports. We'll talk about why the PC-12 feels like a jet thanks to a single leveler power control, and we'll master the rotation speeds that get this 1200 horsepower beast off the mountain safely. In our previous video we discussed the tech specs, but here is the standard operational procedure reality. At 6,500 feet the air is thinner. This means your engine start will be hotter than at sea level. Nice to know, during the start we wait exactly 14% NG, which stands for gas generator speed, before introducing fuel. Why? If you introduce fuel at 10%, there isn't enough airflow to push the heat out of the back of the engine. The fire starts in the turbine and you get a hot start. But waiting for 14%, the compressor is moving enough air to blow the heat out, keeping your ITT in the green. So it's time to take off. But first we of course need to taxi. So let's announce that, because that's of course one of the things which we need to do. So we're gonna announce the taxi and then we'll say we'll wait.
Pilatus Papa Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee is taxiing to runway 4, Lima Foxtrot Lima Juliet.
So that's good. And you might think, hey, now we can use the ground services, but unfortunately you can't use them because there are no ground service available, at least not in the menu. I'm not sure why not, because there are people walking around here. I don't see them anymore, but they are. I think they're standing over there. So we need to do everything ourselves, but luckily this nice aircraft has a reverser mode. Reverser mode can be used, it's also known as the beta zone, and that one can be used to push the aircraft back, but also to brake, because Courchevel has, I would say, a nasty runway, as you heard in the intro, right? It has that slope which is really steep. So what we're gonna first do is we're gonna kind of push the aircraft a little bit back. And the reason I'm setting it already a little bit back, because if you would remove the parking brake you will start to drive forward, and then of course you will crash, and that's not something you want to do. So let's do that. So here we go, and then based on that we're gonna turn the aircraft a bit. But watch out that you're not gonna go too fast, because I've experienced this myself and you really don't want to hit that issue. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you do that then you're screwed, because then you will drive backwards from the mountain. So make sure that you're driving very slowly, or taxi very slowly I should say, because else you're screwed, and then you're driving from this mountain and it's really steep. And you will see what I mean in a few seconds. Here you can see, right? You don't even see the end of the runway. So we're ready for takeoff. But of course then you need to think about things. Okay, hey, but what's the recommended speed, right? What is the recommended best rate of climb? Well, with the gear up and the flaps up it's roughly 120 knots. But of course we first need to drive from this, I would say, steep hill. So we're gonna look at the VR, right, the rotation speed of roughly 78 knots, and then we're taking off. At least we're gonna try to take off. So it's recommended to push, I would say pretty steep initially forward and then slowly pull back, but you will see what I mean in a few seconds, because it's again really super I would say steep. So we're gonna first increase the engine power. And the reason I'm doing this is because if I now remove the brake, I'm gonna move forward a little bit faster. So here we go. This is where you see the steep climb, right? Here we go. It's almost like you're in, I would say, a roller coaster, right? At least that's how I think of it. So we're going good. And here we go. But you need to watch out that you're not gonna pull back too fast, because then you of course will go into that, I would say, stall mode, which you don't want. Now what you will see is that the ground proximity warning will stay there for an entire time. And once we're, say, a little bit higher in altitude, I will show you how to kind of resolve that. In the meantime, let's also do the gear up, right? The gear can be found here. But let's also watch out that we're not going to go into stall mode, because it's of course not what we want. In addition to that, we can do the flaps up. Well, flaps up I said, wrong way. So you can see that we're, I would say, going pretty fast already, right? We're already above that 120 knots, which is the climb rate. So I'm gonna push the aircraft a little bit further, because we need to go above that hill. As you can see, it's pretty high. So let's drop it a little bit, drop the nose a little bit. You can see the aircraft does pretty good, right? You can see it's really, I would say, pretty fast, and climbs also crazy fast. Now you might wonder why you see that message. That message has to do with the compare the fuel quantity, which you see on the MFD. I was able to fix it by manually typing it, and that happened to me already a few times while flying the aircraft. That keeps asking me to correct it. I'm not sure if that's normal, I don't think it is, but I also wasn't able to fix it for some reason. So let me push the aircraft a little bit further back, or stabilize it a little bit. And then of course it's time to maybe switch on the autopilot. You see the weather is, I would say, pretty foggy, also low clouds, but hey, that doesn't, let's say, it isn't an issue, right? So let's first do the auto throttling, right, the AT. Let me zoom into that part. This is where you can set the auto throttling, you can activate it, that's nice. And then the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna enable the autopilot. To enable the autopilot, right, what it will do, well, I need to say pay attention of course to this, is that it will also switch on the yaw damper, as you can see. So by default it will go to that raw mode and pit mode, which is fine, but in this case we need to, say, climb to a certain altitude. So the altitude which we want to climb is at least the 12,531 feet. So let me change the altitude. Here we go. Change it to 5. Using the knobs, and then simply say flight level change. This will push the aircraft into a mode where it tries to keep the speed but climbs to the 12,500 feet, right? You can see that it kind of reduces speed now, but believe me, it will correct itself hopefully very soon. But keep an eye on this or on the speed, right? Because if it goes too slow, you'll end up, I would say, in an issue. If we're coming close to the altitude, what you will see, it automatically switches to A select, which means for altitude select mode. The altitude select mode, you can see it's currently also highlighted. That makes sure that the aircraft, I would say, will stabilize on that altitude. Since we didn't define any heading or didn't identify anything, I'm gonna activate the navigation mode. If you switch on the navigation mode, you will see that it originally, I would say, remains white, which means it's not active. Now there are two ways to fix it. First of all, you need to stay, I would say, pretty close to the green line, and you can see we're, I would say, close enough. And if you're close enough, then you see that it automatically activates that navigation mode. That's super handy, because then it will use the GPS and or pre-programmed flight, I would say, to go to our destination. So nice option, the navigation mode. But there's of course more. There's also that heading mode, which you can see over here. The heading mode can be changed using this option, and I will change it so you can see what happens. Well, nothing happens right now, but you can change it and you can see this number changing, but you can see that you need to scroll like crazy. So there's also an easier way to do that, and that's to right click with the mouse on it, and then it will, I'd say, align with the current heading you're flying. So if I would now switch to the heading mode, it will follow this heading. But that's not always very useful, because the let's say navigation mode simply also changes if you're flying to the next nav 8, while the heading mode continues to fly in that same direction. So you can see we're now nicely flying. Say we're flying pretty stable. And you can see that the aircraft tries to go to a speed of 230, and that's due to the fact that that's caused by this. You can set it either to the FMS, which is the flight management system, or you can set it to man, which stands for manual, and then you can manually define it using this knob on the front. Where does it get these speeds from? Well, in most cases from the flight plan, because in the flight plan you can see that the speed is set to 230. That's where that 230 on this end comes from, and it still is below that, I would say, warning level. And of course you can change it to fly more efficient, right? I would say reduce the fuel usage, etc. Now we're airborne, there of course are some other things which you need to keep in mind. For example, you need to look at the torque PSI, which is the pressure, but also at the temperature, because if the temperature, I'd say, is too high, that's not good, right? Then you need to kind of decrease the power of the engine to avoid that it's being overheating, and that's not what we want. Besides that, we can see the other things like the RPMs of the engine, the gas temperature, we can see the oil pressure and the oil temperature, right? This is the temperature, this is the pressure, and the temperature outside. And if we now scroll to this part, that's where also some interesting information is shown. Right, we can see that currently it's using the FMS, the flight management system. This is our next beacon, and this is the, I would say, distance, right? 23.8. Well, and if you would look here, you'd also see that it's 23.4, sorry, and 23.8 is the direction, which is also shown over here. So the course is 238, and distance is 23.1. You can see that it deviates a bit, or no, it's almost the same. But we still see that irritating message over here, which is being, I would say, caused by this one. And you can fix it by manually adjusting the view over here. So what I figured out is if you look at the view, you can adjust it and then simply correct it. The question, of course, is if this is normal. I'm not sure, because you can see the view quantity over here is 1, 2, 2, 3. So what I did is, in this case, 1, 2, 2, 3, and then hit enter, and then hit enter again, and then the warning is gone, as you can see. Again, I'm not sure if this is normal, but I'll say that's the way how I fixed it. In addition to that, you sometimes see that the ground proximity is, let's say, keeping blinking, keeping alerting you. To resolve that, what you can do is you can go to the inhabits, then activate the GS inhabit and terrain inhabit, and then switch them off. That resolves the issue. That's, I would say, a known bug in the current version of Flight Simulator 2024 also, so keep that in mind. Now I need to look at what we've been instructed to, because I think that they were asking us to climb to a higher level, yeah, 240. So let's do that, because then we also can show you the other options to climb. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the altitude, right? It's set to 250, but needs to set to 240. I'm going to use the large knob because that's most easy, and then use the small knob to move the other digits. And then we're going to climb using another mode. You can climb using the FLC mode, but also you can say, hey, I want to climb using the VS, which stands for vertical speed mode. The vertical speed mode can be manipulated using this, I would say, small knob. And what you will see now, if you look very closely here, you can see that it's now being set to 600 feet per minute. That's the climb rate. And you can see that the aircraft starts climbing. You say you can adjust it, and that's pretty nice. The only downside of using this mode is that you need to keep an eye on the speed, because you can see what happens, the speed goes down. So what I always prefer, but that's my personal preference, is using the FLC mode, which is the flight level change mode, because that at least ensures that I climb using a stable, let's say, speed, in most cases, not always. Because you can see it now goes completely crazy. So let's see what happens, because it's now going to decrease the speed to 140. So it will maintain 140 as the climb speed, which is, I would say, still good, right? Because we don't want to, I would say, over consume things. And that's also what is in the manual. According to the manual, it says, okay, the climb speed for this aircraft is 120 knots roughly. And then we can simply, say, do the other things. So pretty nice functionality. And since we're above at 10,000 feet, it's also recommended to change the baro, right? You can change the baro, you can change it to standard mode by right-clicking on it, and it will correct the baro. In the meantime, it says here, check the baro settings, which means that we need to, say, put it back in most cases. And then it will warn you, right? It says, okay, hey, check the baro settings, so let's leave it for now. And let's forget the error.
Pilatus Papa Hotel, Yankee Delta Yankee, Marseille Center, QNH 1008.
And likely the baro setting has to do with the other one, because this one is still set to 29.92, while this one has been set to standard. So that's something which you need to correct also, right? But there's no option to move it to standard. You really need to adjust it manually, as you can see. So we're climbing, everything is good. And here you can see the compare fuel quality again, because in this case you can see that the fuel quality has changed again. So for some reason, I'm not sure why, it looks like this value is not being picked up automatically. And why do you need to put in this value? Well, because it has an effect on your, say, flight plan. The cool thing about the flight plan is if you go to the fuel weight and also to the other options, you will see that you can, let's say, set the transactional or the trans altitude, right, the transition altitude. And if you look at this one, you can also set the V-speed for landing, and you can also compare some other things. But this is also pretty cool, the flight summary, which shows you, okay, hey, what's the average IS, right, the indicated airspeed, what's the distance, what's the average GS, which stands for ground speed, and the ground distance. So nice information. Also the flight time is being located here, so nice overview. As you can see, we're climbing pretty fast, pretty good, and I'd say we're good to go, right? We're going into the next beacon, which is Nidu or Nidru, and what you will see in 6.8 6.7 miles, nautical miles to be precise, it will start turning the aircraft automatically. So that's kind of nice, right? Because we don't need to do anything. Of course, the aircraft remains climbing using a stable speed. You can see that the speed has been set now to Mach, right? So keep that in mind, that you might want to adjust it. You can adjust it by simply pressing the button over here, and then it will move to, normally it will move, let me see. Normally it will show you the knots speed, but for some reason it doesn't do it. Maybe it was this. No, it worked in the past, but looks like it's broken now. Normally you can change this again to the normal speed if you want, but for some reason it doesn't change it like I wanted it to. Even though I pressed it, you saw it. So we're currently in flight level change mode. Alt select is deactivated because we're not there yet at the altitude. You can see that the yaw damper is active. You can see that the autopilot is active, and then that the navigation mode is active. But what you also see is that it has set the speed now to a higher level. That's why the aircraft stops climbing a bit, right? You can see that the climb rate has descended massively. So what you can do, if you want, you can of course switch back to that other mode. Right, you can switch back to the VS mode, and then simply change the value to, let's say, 400 feet per minute, and then you can see that the aircraft starts climbing again. But keep in mind, the vertical speed requires you to check the speed itself, because else, if you go too slow, things go wrong. In the meantime, we're going to Nisar, which is the next waypoint, and you can see that the aircraft automatically turns because we switched on the autopilot. Super neat, super useful, so pretty nice. Now if you forgot to complete the after takeoff list, which is over here, you can always check it, right? You can say, hey, landing gear up, yaw damper on. This one needs to be set to off or open. That's, I would say, it's right of heart, right? Taxi lights need to be switched off, and then we can say, hey, we completed it, and the taxi lights, are they off? Well, they're not actually off, but now they are. In the meantime, let's also switch on the no smoking signal in the aircraft. And that's between brackets how easy it is to fly this aircraft. So you can see that it has auto throttling, it has the altitude, it has all the other cool things, which makes flying super nice in this aircraft. Now of course we could stay in this flight and land, but what I decided to do is I decided to split them up in separate videos. So in this video we departed from Courchevel and transitioned into a solid IFR climb in the ultimate test of your standard operating procedures, right? We followed the official path, we climbed, we switched on the autopilot, but we also trusted the FedEx, which managed the mountain, because we could simply take off without overheating the engine. Next week we're gonna look at what I call Flight Ops number 2, because this is Flight Ops number 1, and we're gonna master the long game, right? We talked about how to fly, and then we're gonna talk about fuel management, but also using the slow prop mode to keep it quiet in the cabin, because you can currently hear that it's pretty loud. And we're gonna attempt to make a landing on the airport, on the destination airport. Thanks for looking at this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then hit the like button, and I hope to see you back next week.